sponsor wanted me to chair this meeting, and of course, I try to do what he asks. But it's kind of difficult to try to find people to do it, to tell their story. I asked a couple folks, man, they like, I ain't ready, or no, they can't make it. But when I asked this young man, he used like the 5:45 meeting, man, and he's really, I can tell he's working this program. Don't know a whole bunch of details about it, but he will tell you where he's at with his sobriety. And straightforward, seem to be authentic. And me personally, I like the fact that others can work this program, just for a newcomer to see, hey man, look at this guy can do what I can too. And I'm grateful for that. He always have interesting stuff about his little personal stuff, man, and it's great to hear him work through this program. Smart guy too. So with that, I'll introduce Brad.
Thank you, Ramon. Hey. Is this thing on? Hey everyone, I'm Brad and I'm an alcoholic. Hey y'all, I'm a little nervous, so bear with me here. I'm gonna push through and hopefully I can say something that can reach someone. If I can reach at least one person here, I think I've done my due diligence. But so my sobriety date is 4/22/24, and with the grace of God, I have 1 year this coming Tuesday. Yep. First year ever, First year, unless I count those 13 years that I had sober, and then I turned 14 years old and took my first drink, Anyway, I thought I'd try it. Anyway, so y'all are probably going to hear some things that you've heard before because everything you learned taught me everything I know, which is something I heard from Roscoe down at the Bridges of Hope. So I'm going to tell you, Bridges of Hope, baby. Yeah. So my job here is to tell you what I was like, some experience, what happened, some strength, and what I'm like now, some hope. My mom asked me one time when she had diabetes, and I remember that she had 5 amputations, and she was on dialysis, and her eyesight was going bad. By this time, I think I was about 25 years old. She said, "Bradley, why do you drink so much?" And I started crying, as an adult. I said, "I don't know, Mom, I thought maybe it was because my daddy wasn't around, because my daddy, I started blaming all these other things. And it wasn't until I came into Alcoholics Anonymous that I found out it's because I was selfish. I was selfish and self-centered, and I didn't care what anybody else had going on as long as I got what I wanted. And how did I get there? How did I get there from my mama's sweet baby boy? My mama was an immigrant from Korea, from South Korea, and my daddy was a Cabbage Town, blonde-haired, blue-eyed white boy. He was cool though. He was a ghetto white boy, and he came from all 5 boys. But anyway, my mom instilled in me some good values. She instilled in me kindness and just good things. She was very sweet to me. I was her baby. She had me very late in life, and my daddy wasn't around. And when I asked her why my daddy wasn't around, she said he's out partying, and I didn't know what that meant until I got a little older. With that being said, drugs are a part of my story. I will respect the house, and I will keep that talk to a minimum because I know this is AA. And so I'm going to skip over all the, I was a biracial child, and my brothers and sisters weren't. And throughout school, I went to, let me see, now I'm a Grady baby. So I was born in Atlanta, was raised in College Park. And by the time I was coming up, it was majority black folks, you know what I mean? The gentrification in every city happened, and it happened around that time when I was down there. So I always stood out. I always stood out at school. I was the only one of my kind, it looked like, and that was a handicap for a long time. I was very afraid. I was very timid, and And it wasn't about till middle school when I started smoking a little weed, and you know how that goes. I stopped caring about all that stuff. And then what used to be a handicap became an arrogance. You ain't never met nobody like me, and I learned very early on to be arrogant and egocentric, but I didn't think so at the time. I thought I was just one of the boys. All right, so we're gonna fast forward through high school. I know a lot of people I've done it before. I've got stuck in high school, But long story short, I failed ninth grade twice, and I dropped out at 11th grade. By that time, I was excuse my language, a fucking loser. I was an alcoholic already. I was a weed head. I was a womanizer. I just had bad qualities, and then they began to set in high school, and then I dropped out, and I went to go work with my brother doing construction. And, construction work, you just smoke when the boss is gone, drink when the boss is gone. But I was a full-blown alcoholic already. I was stealing. I was manipulative. I was dishonest. I was just all those things, man, of a bad kid, But I fronted like I was a good kid. Mom, I love you. I love you. I remember her telling me, she said, no, you don't. If you loved me, you would let me know where you were. You wouldn't leave me up waiting for you all night. Why are you out with these people doing those things? Look at my eyes. Look at my eyes. Something's wrong with you. And I love you, Mom. I love you. I was her baby. So when she came to America, she was a cosmetologist. And I'm only mentioning this because it comes back later in the story. So she got a beauty shop on Cleveland Avenue. My mother's American name was Shirley. Suntuck Shirley Williams. You get an American name when you come to America. So she picked Shirley. And she moved to Trinity. She worked in Trinity Towers on Cleveland Avenue. And she used to take me to work with her. And anyway, this will come back later. It'll all make sense later. Okay, so of course, I was an alcoholic. I trained my body to be an alcoholic. My body did not like alcohol at first. I found pride in drinking till I threw up and passing out and drinking because it was fun to other people to watch. I was a fucking party animal. I was a class clown. I was an attention whore. And I did whatever to get attention. And sooner or later, around 19, I think I discovered coke, and I realized that I could drink more when I snort this stuff. I could stay up longer, I could drink more. Now, what happened with that was a lot of weird stuff. Like, you stay up all hours of the night, and a lot of weird shit happened, okay? Because I was a sex fiend. And I had to talk about a lot of that stuff on my fifth step, But anyway, so cocaine came in 19, and then, I would steal pills from my brother, little medicines and stuff. Dabbled in a little meth. Alcohol was always there, though. Don't never get it twisted. If I started out drinking Hennessy and Quavo Gold and Absolute Vodka, this weekend I'll get Tanqueray, next weekend I'll get some fucking Jim Beam or something. In the last 10 years, it was all Taco Vodka. It was all Taco Vodka, and my mindset was it all does the same shit anyway. More bang for your buck. I got to the point where I was like, man, I will invest stocks in Taco Vodka because this got to be the #1 seller. As much as I was going back to the liquor store and my buddies, it was Taco Vodka. Come on, $3.79 a pint. I got hip to the game, so instead of buying pint after pint, I would just get the big bottle and reuse my pint bottles. And then just stuff that in my jacket pocket. I could walk around, ride MARTA and shit, drunk as hell. Or I pour it in a water bottle. That's a real smooth one. But I think people catch on when you're just taking sips of water all day. Anyway. But the first consequences started happening, of course, dishonesty to my mother. And then I got beat up real bad one time at a party. Then I got locked up, public drunk. When I knew I was powerless was when I knew I had a drug test coming up for probation, and I couldn't stop. I knew that I would probably go to jail, and I didn't stop. She says, Mr. Williams, pee in this cup, and I said, damn, fuck it. Go to jail for 3 months. And in jail, I would sit there and I would read. I would read books. I would draw pictures. For 90 days, my art was getting sharper. My thoughts, my clarity was so sharp when I would write these journal entries and these plans for the future. And I'd get out of jail after 90 days and go get a drink. And it's happened twice. It's happened twice with the 90-day thing, but I would get locked up probably over 15 times, all drug and alcohol related, and I know the routine, Just hope somebody bonds me out. Now I got to a point at about 26 years old. My mother was real sick, and around that time she asked me that question, and I used to take care of her. So I used to dress her wounds. I used to change her dialysis. I used to change her diaper. I used to clean her up. I used to feed her, check her blood sugar, and then I go drink. Oh, all done. I can go have me a drink now. And this was heartbreaking for my mother to see, in that condition. I remember going to sleep by her bedside at the hospital, and these nights I wouldn't drink intentionally because I know if I got started, I wouldn't stop, and I can't do that in the hospital. So I would just smoke weed that night and then sleep next to my mom. Now, under the guise that I was a good son, really I was ducking and dodging probation warrants. I was a selfish asshole, and I was manipulative, and I was a fucking front. I was a fake, man, to my own mom who loved me with all her heart. Now, in 2008, June 27th, I remember being in the back room. She lived with my brother. I lived with my brother. My brother built the house and got my mom a room in there. And I remember living there just freeloading like I've always been. And they went out of town, and they left mom with me to watch. And I remember I was mean to her because I said to her, Mom, I can't keep feeding you if you're going to keep throwing up. And I was just in a hurry to get back there and drink with my buddies and shoot some pool. My brother had these intercom systems in his house. Like, he had some nice shit. And they got baby monitor mode where you can hear what's going on downstairs when you're back there. And then my buddy said, Brad, come here. I think something's going on downstairs. And my other brother, who had just got out of prison, was giving my mom CPR. And I ran down there, and she was gone. She was passed away, and I was mean to her that day, because I wanted to go fucking drink, That's just one thing that qualifies me, man. There are a lot of other things that could qualify me, time after time. So I had a son in 2010. I had a son in 2010 with the girl next door of my brother's house. And this girl, we messed around. I got her pregnant. And I told her I wanted to be with her, and I was ready for a committed relationship, and I wasn't. I was just trying to get what I want like I always do. And we ended up having a child. And while she was pregnant, she would hear me, because I was literally lived next door, and she would hear my head when it hits the porch at night. Boom! And she'd check on me the next day, are you okay? I heard you passed out again. I was like, no, I'm all right, don't worry about me, I got this, I'm all right. And so anyway, she ends up having a baby. I cheat on her while she's 7 months pregnant. It just ruined that, broke her heart. And this is the story. This is what I always do. I build the structure up and I topple it over my head. Crushed by a self-imposed crisis. We can no longer postpone or evade. And that's what I've done. I've pulled the structure on my head all throughout my life. And about the last 10 years is when it's gotten really bad. Now this time I've been homeless, floating around the east side of Atlanta, living on people's couches, living in and out of hotels, working every day to pay for a room every day, and then buy drugs and buy alcohol. And it got real bad. Like I was on Candler Road, and I got kicked out of every hotel. I had a girl who was with me at the time, and I was an abuser. I was a taker of things and a user of people. And I became everything that I said I never would. Everybody who I've ever judged in my life, I became. Everybody. Any negative thought I've had about any person, I've become that person. And crack was the last thing that really took me out. Crack it was very scary, and it took me up through some pretty dark nooks and crannies. That's some of that fifth step shit, right? But you got to get it out. And so what happened? I was living with a dope boy at the time, and I had known this guy for a long time, but he let me stay with him. Over the years, I've accumulated skills. I can build a house from the ground up. I can. But I just want my money, at the end of the day, so I cannot show up to work tomorrow. And this guy knew that I was skilled like that. And, people would let me come live with them and just work. I got some, and they would make money off of me and just pay me in crumbs. And I go buy my liquor. I walk to the liquor store. I mean, I was dedicated. I remember before they just started selling on Sunday around this time in Georgia, the 13th, late-ass colony. It was the last one to start selling in Georgia. So I remember counting up my $3.79 in quarters sitting outside that liquor store, and it was like $12.35. And it's like, God dang it. It started selling on Sunday, and then you got to wait till 12:30, and I'm sitting out there like, man, golly, I thought you'd never show up. I was sitting out there, and that's how I would chase that liquor. I would chase those drugs. I would go wherever drugs were that I could be used to buy drugs and drink all the time. And I had this fucking delusional thought. I was like, I'm just going wherever God leads me, and that was such horse shit. I was just so fucking delusional. And so I remember around, July of 2023. Now, by this time, I've been in a detox once. When I first thought I could get clean, I said, okay, maybe if I consciously go to a detox facility, I'll be okay. So I went to a 3-day detox at Cobb Behavioral Services. My cousin, he was like, man, you can go to Cobb Behavioral Services, get cleaned up. And I go there and I get cleaned up and they give me these meds and I feel good. And then at the end of 3 days, they're like, well, where are you going next? Like, shit, I'm going back home, And I get the Uber driver to stop off at the liquor store as I leave the detox. I mean, it's just fucking crazy. So I started at the detox, and the next thing they was like, well, maybe you need to go to the extension in Marietta. So I went to the extension, and Robert Jordan asked me, he said, what are you willing to do for victory over alcohol? Anything, sir, anything. And they gave me my phone back in 90 days, and then I got on Facebook, and they put me out. Because you're not supposed to get on Facebook or social media, so I wasn't willing to do that. I wasn't willing to get off social media yet. I wasn't ready. So fast forward, I go to a couple more treatment centers, Twin Lakes. This whole time my cousin's gotten sober. I'm reaching out to people who are getting clean because I know in my heart I want to get clean. I just don't know what to do. I'm not familiar with the recovery community. I don't know how to go about doing this, man. I just thought I was going to die drunk. I was going to die a crackhead. So I keep reaching out to people, who have my best interests in mind. They're checking on me. And he says, go to Twin Lakes. I'm like, yeah, whatever. All right, I ain't got nowhere else to go. I'm homeless. Shit. Dope man sick of me by now. So I go to 30 days at Twin Lakes. Now, my dad overdoses in 2019. And it's about 2021, I think, I started on this recovery journey, where I really started taking it serious. And my dad's name was Chris, Rodney Chris Williams, rest in peace. But I get into Twin Lakes. Actually, I called Twin Lakes, and that's up in Monroe, Georgia, and a guy named Chris answers the phone. And I'm like, okay, all right, I'll talk to you tomorrow. I'll call back with some more information tomorrow. I'll call back tomorrow, and it's Crystal. Now, right before this happened, I remember I was in a shack in the woods I had been living in for about a year, and this girl used to come smoke meth with me and stuff, and she gave me this necklace. And it wasn't an expensive necklace. She said, could you hold this? My grandmother gave it to me, and I want to keep it safe. I said, I live in a fucking shack. What are you giving it to me for? But I took it. Now, on this necklace was the St. Christopher. St. Christopher. And I took all of this as signs, And so my dad, Chris, passed, and I got this St. Christopher necklace, and I called this place, and there's a Chris that answers the phone, there's a Crystal that answers the phone. And I decided to go, and it's another Chris who is my tour guide of the place, and then Christopher Hunt is my therapist. And then I start hearing about, the 12 steps, and I start hearing about a spiritual awakening. I start hearing about I need an entire psychic change. So I took all those things as just coincidences, mere coincidences. Yeah, Chris is a common name. Yeah, whatever. So when I was growing up, my mom's birthday was 10/19, and my birthday is 11/19. Never thought nothing of it other than 30 days apart. Well, on this journey, I remember being at Twin Lakes, and I remember everyone eating in the kitchen. Everyone's eating in the kitchen, and one of these days, I just wasn't feeling it, man. I said, I'm going to go sit outside. There's one table on the back porch with one chair in it. Now, you got these people who write stuff on the table. You know, so-and-so was here one day at a time, give up one thing for everything. Right where that chair was where I sat down was 10/19, 11/19. Now, see, that was somebody's intake and outtake date at the rehab. It was 30 days apart, but it was the only date on the table. And I believe it wouldn't have meant anything to anyone else, but for me, it was a spiritual experience. You know, and what I looked at is this is a guidepost. This is a sign that I'm right where I'm supposed to be, when I'm supposed to be there. Now, this was the first of many. I told somebody about this experience, and they said, well, did you see a red robin? I said, no, I didn't see a fucking red robin. What is that supposed to mean? Didn't you hear what I just told you, the numbers? And then they're like, well, the red robin signifies, you know, a loved one looking after you and whatnot. So I said, okay, that's cool, man. I didn't see a red robin. Thanks for discounting my story. So I go up to Therapist Hunt's office the next day, and there's a tapping on the window. It's a red robin on a tree branch tapping the window. Now, for anyone else, that might not have meant anything, but for me, that was a spiritual experience. By this time, I had already accepted the fact that I'm an alcoholic, but that didn't stop me. These spiritual experiences didn't stop me. I went to a sober living after Twin Lakes, and I was about to round up on 52 days, and I got into it with a roommate. I said, fuck this, I don't got to take this shit, I'm leaving. I found any excuse to go back to right where I was before I got there, and I kept doing the same shit. And it's a progressive disease. I got worse, and and I went back to Twin Lakes. This time I met another Chris, and this Chris, I did 30 days at Twin Lakes again. This Chris was interested in my artwork. And he said, I bought that Ninja Turtles piece, and I did a dope-ass piece, and he said, I buy that from you for $20. I said, cool. And I'll do another one for you for 20. And then he started and then someone else gave me 20, and then someone else gave me 20. So I'm back at rehab, trying to figure out how to come up with money so I can go back out to the streets. Powerless, you know? And I used these people's time, and I used their money to go relapse. This Chris suggested, he said, man, why don't you go to Bridges of Hope? You know, they're recommending you go to Bridges of Hope. Why don't you go there, man? I know, I've heard of Roscoe. You know, he's been there, not he heard of him. He knows Roscoe. He's telling me about Lee. He's telling me about Bo. And he's like, man, just go down there, dude. And I was like, man, 6 months. No, I ain't doing that. You know, and I leave the rehab. And when I tell you, these people, were crying to get me to go. Like, they cared about me, man. They cared about me, and they were crying, please, Bradley, just go down here. You know, we love you, and thanks, but no thanks, you know. So, took all that money I just made at Twin Lakes, and I went back to the dope man's basement, you know, to go live in a little room in the back in a cinder block basement, damp, dank, stank. And this guy, I remember him telling me, he said, go walk to the store for me. I said, man, it's about to start raining. He said, motherfucker, you living in my house, you better go walk to that store. All right, man, I got you. Go walk a mile to the store, walk a mile back, and he throws a crack rock on the floor, you know. I sat back there in that little room, and I thought about those people at Twin Lakes. And I thought about how nice they were to me. And I thought about them crying for me, caring about me. And here I am letting this man talk to me like shit, treat me like a dog. I got a son. Who's waiting on his daddy to come home, wondering if daddy loves him or not. What the fuck am I doing in this damn basement? So, by this time, when this dope boy on the east side got sick of me, I went down to the one in College Park. Now, the one in College Park was a much more organized dope boy. He had a business, you know, and I would do things for this guy, like, you know, build studios in his 4-bedroom house and build a after-hour spot down in this 20 by 50 shed and fucking make a listening room in this studio over here. And I lived with him for another year. And, you know, this guy done broke my ribs. The other one pistol whipped me, you know, and I'm allowing these people to do this to me. because I want to get high, because I want to get drunk, because I just wanted to do what I wanted to do. And that's the best I could come up with, you know, to get treated like a fucking animal. And now, I used to put in these dice boards for this guy. I don't know if any, and I hope I'm not like putting the business out there. He said there's 2 guys in Atlanta who know how to build these dice boards. Now they're electromagnetic boards, and you put them about 1 3/4 to 2.5 inches under the floor, and they have these dice, and when you flip it looks like a garage door remote. When you hit the remote, an electromagnetic signal sends the dice to 7-Eleven. Now, they had gambling nights over there. And he would let the guys win 10,000 this night, 10,000 that night, and on Friday he'll rack up 50, 60,000, clear all the dope boys out. And I remember installing this dice board. I never did this shit before. And I remember having this feeling where if this don't work, he's gonna kill me. They're gonna kill him and they're gonna kill me. That didn't stop me. That didn't stop me from doing what I was doing. Now, mind you, by this time, drinking every day, smoking a shitload of crack, I started hearing voices, man. I started hearing voices, and I swore I was intercepting the signal. You know, I can hear you. Cut your audio off. Cut your audio off. You know those crazy crackheads that I used to judge walking down the street? Oh, I was him now. I remember judging my dad, because he was one of us. I remember judging him from bringing home some food that he found. And I used to be like, hey, you're a bum and all this and that. I was better than him because I snorted it and he smoked it. You know, it's fucking crazy, man. And he had an AA book. I remember he had a blue AA book. And I was like, that shit don't work. You ain't sick. You ain't sick. You know, and I used to be so fucking critical, man. Till I was homeless. And I remember one night, I was thirsty. And I was looking for a place to sleep. But I wanted to be in a well-lit area, but not too lit. To where, you know, like, I want to be able to see me if I scream, but I don't want you to be able to see me if I'm quiet. You know, like, just trying to find somewhere to lay. And I remember I was real thirsty. And I remember I looked in the trash can, and there was a half a Mountain Dew right there. And when I grabbed it, it hit me. I said, I'm sorry, God. My dad was gone by this time. You know, if I remember anything that my daddy told me, he said, you'll understand when you get older. You know, all that shit that you on right now, all this judgment, this being critical like it can't happen to you, son. Oh, when I grabbed that Mountain Dew, I said, I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry, man. You know, the shoe was on the other foot. Like I said, I become everybody who I've ever judged. But anyway, so back to that year, putting in them dice boards for the guy, and then I started hearing voices, and I started going crazy. So I went back to the other guy. I got in 2 head-on car collisions with this dude. And the second one was on Moreland Avenue. And all I remember was waking up. And I looked around, and there was shattered glass everywhere. He was over there being seen by the paramedics. And I had blood just coming down my face. Like, I had to get 18 staples in my head that night. And I got out of the car and checked on him. They left me in the fucking car. You know, the dude came up to him and said, I think your buddy's dead. I woke up out of that and I said, Bradley, you are going to die like this. This is your second time doing this. You're going to die like this. You're going to die drunk. You're going to die drug addict. You're going to die a loser. And I still stayed there for 1 more week. I stayed there for 1 more week and I got my staples taken off. And I remember we got into it about something and he punched me. He said he tried to bust my wound back open. And then he kicked me out the house. When he kicked me out the house, this is what happened. I was behind the Family Dollar, and everything I owned was in a trash bag. Everything I owned was in a trash bag, and I was using it for a cushion to sit on. It was nighttime. I think it was a Friday night or something like that. And all of a sudden, I was homeless. Again, now I didn't have, you know, one dope boy's dead, the other one kicked me out. My family didn't want anything else to do with me. My mother's gone, my dad's gone. I'm behind the fucking Family Dollar on Boulder Crest Road. And I remember I was trying to light that last one, and it started fucking raining. I said, that's it. I'm done. God, I am done. I'm sorry. Please help me. I don't know what to do anymore. I called my brother. Now, I called him about 5 minutes before that. I said, David, can I just work with you for free? I just need to be around somebody, please. He said, nope, not until you get some help. I don't want nothing to do with you, man. It's painful to watch. It's not fair what you're doing to us, you know. And I said, all right, I'll go to the Bridges of Hope. I'll go. Now, that shit, the Bridges of Hope, people run from that shit. Like, and I did. I ran for about 1.5 years until I needed it. And man, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. You know, the Bridges of Hope took away my phone. It's all dudes, you know, and it's like, there's no women, there's no phones, there's no TV, except on Saturday and Sunday if you're good, you know. Now this place, at 41 years old, taught me how to be a man. And when I say how to be a man, I mean to wake up in the morning and make my bed up, clean my room up, put my shoes in line, tuck my shirt in, you know, because if you don't, you got to write about it. They got consequences. Now these consequences are nothing compared to the real life consequences you get, because it taught me that it all starts as a thought process. The problem with alcoholic centers in his mind. My entitlement, my jealousy, my controlling, my possessiveness, my selfishness, all this started right here. My obstinacy, my disobedience, everything, my vulgarity, my crudeness, my fucking sexual deviancy, all started right here. And it all started as a thought process. Since I've been at the Bridges of Hope, I just got news today, number 8. The guy is the 8th one I know that I rode the roads with that's dead. And it was very, very eye-opening to see a guy that you sit with for 6 months. You think he's working the program, you think he's doing the steps, but he's cutting up. You know, he's snickering and laughing while people are talking, and he gets out and he's dead 2 days later. His mom finds him dead on the toilet. You know, that was the first one. You know, the second one. So Bridges of Hope was so good, I went back twice, y'all. All right. I did 6 months there. And Roscoe, man, oh my God. He's the closest thing to a Shaolin monk you'll ever meet. But he's a short redneck fella from where's he from? Bullock County or something like that. But he's very spiritual, man. He's helped thousands of guys, seen hundreds die. You know, guys who just wouldn't let go. You know, he told us one day, he said, if sober is not the most important thing on your mind, you ain't getting sober. He said, if you still worried about 10-inch Timmy out there hold up with your wife, you ain't getting sober. He said 10-inch Timmy, where'd I get that from? But he just spoke from the heart, man. He let it fucking fly open his mouth and shit just flew out, but it was good shit. Shit I needed to hear, and he was fucking hardcore, you know. Yeah, 10-inch Timmy is a classic. But anyway. So I did my 6 months at the Bridges, and you know, I didn't understand it yet. You know, I thought that connection meant me and you connecting and talking about them over there. I thought that was connection, you know, and it wasn't. It was connecting with everybody and everything, you know, and it was like I didn't understand the sponsorship thing, and I just didn't get it. I just didn't understand. I was still fucking selfish. I had a reservation. That's what it was. And I got out. I said, sure, I'll do what you tell me to do. I'll go to the Benaiah house and go there and sober living. And I hated my roommates. I hated my job. I hated everything. It was all bullshit to me. You know, I said, when I get $10,000, I'm going to smoke 1,000. And we're going to party. We're going to spend another 1,000 on booze and hookers. You know, I mean, I still had this fucked up thinking. Now, mind you, this is where God starts to show. God's been showing his face, but this is when it all started coming into play. Remember those synchronicities about like the 1019 and the Robin and the Chris's and all that? Things start happening when I open up the gate. Like so after 8.5 months, I went to the Bridges for 6, 2.5 months. I was at the sober living. I hated everything. I fucked around and saved up $1,400. Big money Brad. It's party time. I drove up to Atlanta for 4 days. Man, in 4 days, I had lost my freaking mind like no other. You know, I was at Tokyo Valentino. I was damn smoking crack in College Park. I was crazy. Now this picture right here, is a picture of me crawling out of a storm drain with the police standing there. I called the police on myself. I said, please come get me, sir. 17 times. They finally came. I called him, and then I said, man, he said, what's your emergency, sir? Man, somebody's trying to kill me. Who's trying to kill you, sir? I don't know. I said, I don't know, but this fucking white car keeps following me around. And then they're like, well, where are you? I'm walking down MLK. Well, they're like, stay where you're at. I'm like, I'm not standing still for them to get me, you know. And I had the bright idea in this picture. I said I was going to crawl through the sewer. And by the time they come around to where I'm at, I'm going to hop out the other end of the sewer, you know, the sewer grate. So I crawl in the sewer, and I try to knock it out, and it's concreted in. And when I tell you, like some Twilight Zone shit, I might as well heard the Twilight Zone music because I thought my life was going to be over. And I got stuck. I got stuck in the sewer trying to turn around and come back out. And in that moment, my life flashed before my eyes. And I was in like a bad psychosis, and all I pictured were everybody I ever hurt. And it said, this is what you get. Play stupid games, you get stupid prizes. I go back to Bridges of Hope. Sure, please, come get me. I don't got nothing. I get it now, man. I'm sorry. Like, I thought that the dope and the hookers and the liquor was going to make me better. I thought it was going to be fun. It wasn't fun. I felt I knew the spiritual bankruptcy they talk about. I felt so bad. And you know, by this time, I had been gifted a car. By this time, I had clothes again. By this time, I had material possessions, and I just started building relationships back with my family. And this was a different step one. This step one hit different. This was the gut level concession that I learned. I said I had no excuse. So I went back and remember I told you I got in a car accident before, like 8 months prior to this. I had got something in the mail and was like, we heard about your settlement claim. Call us. Ken Nugent. Called Ken Nugent. And I just mentioned this part because this is what made it all start making sense to me. Ken Nugent gave me a claim. He said, the other person saw your injuries. They're willing to pay you $25,000. We'll take a third. You get $16,000. You want to do that? And I was like, yeah. Hell yeah. And then he's like, you can pay your medical bills. I said, do I have to? He said, no. All right. Cool, run it. And then, so when I relapsed in them 4 days, they said, come on back to the Bridges of Hope, Bradley. I was driving back down from Atlanta to Louisville, Georgia. It's a 2.5-hour drive. It took me 8 hours to get down there because I kept pulling off. I even turned around one time, and I didn't even know I turned around. It was like, it's crazy. But I remember I was at the liquor store on my way back to Bridges of Hope for the second time, and the lawyer called. He said, sorry, they're not going to pay anything. Fuck, man. Shit. So I went back to Bridges of Hope. Now I got nothing, no settlement coming. Still have my car, but I drove back there. And man, I wanted to leave. It was humiliating being right back in the same year to a 6-month program, and I was fighting it. I was fighting it with all I had. I said, man, I want to go, man. And they said, at least stay to your court date. I had a court date from an old domestic violence charge from 4 years ago. We'll take you to court up in Atlanta. Took me to court up here in DeKalb County, and I went to court. And I said, I'm going to leave after court. And then I thought about it. I thought how they just scholarshiped me to be there. They just stopped what they were doing to drive me 2.5 hours to court. And I said, fuck, that's fucking selfish, man. I said, I give up. I don't need to go nowhere. I don't got nowhere to go. Went up there to call my probation officer from the front office. While I was in the office, the lawyer called. Said, oh yeah, we found a loophole. We'll be down there to have you sign some paperwork. Get you $16,000. I said, cool. At this point, I knew that something else was working in my favor when I do the right thing. Now, out of that $16,000, I blew all of it pretty much in rehab. Imagine that. I put up 1,000, gave 1,000 to somebody else's fund, and I blew the shit. You know, like I made some amends. Now I did spend a few thousand on amends and my son and his mom and stuff, but I blew a lot of it. You know. Now, what happened when I got back to the Bridges of Hope and I didn't want to be there, I remember this is when it all kicked off. I'm gonna preface this with this. My mom used to come home late from work when I was about in 6th grade, and she would bring me home a half of a sub sandwich. And she would say, I couldn't enjoy this without sharing it with you. Boom. Check this out. I was sitting in Devo one day, devotion hall. I had just came from Bridges, so I knew the schedule. I knew the ins and outs. And there was Andy on this side and Keith on this side. And I remember these guys were fresh to the program, and they didn't know what to do. And I remember helping him with his schedule and telling him, you can do it. I just did it. And I remember little conversations like that. For that moment, I forgot about me. I said, holy shit. Wasn't that bad being here for those 5 minutes, you know. Some kind of release just happened. It felt good helping those guys. So then a new guy comes in my room and he says, man, I don't know what to do, man. I can't call my wife, and this guy named John, and he's my roommate. And I said, well, you know, we can get the office to help you call her. You know, and I told him my story. I gave him a breakdown of what happened and why I ended up right back there. He said, I want you to sponsor me. I said, I ain't even went back through the steps yet, man, but I will. I'd be glad to. This is about my 2nd or 3rd week in there. Guy asked me to sponsor him. I said, all right, but let me finish running back through the steps first. And then, you know, I get with my sponsor, Freddie, and he runs me through the steps, and he tells me about the cycle of addiction. Tells me about how these bedevilments cause the spiritual malady, which causes the obsession, which leads to the allergy, the craving after the first use, which leads to the consequences and the sprees, and then which leads to the emerging remorseful, and then making resolutions. And then there's this little space right here, page 14. For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he would not be able to handle the trials and low spots ahead. He said, that's why you relapse, Bradley. That little spot right there, that's why your life has been like that for 25 years. At any time, come to AA. You know, I heard another speaker say about that the AA triangle is an ancient spiritual symbol that represents mind, body, and soul. You know, the unity is the soul. The service is the body, and the recovery is the mind. You know, you got to have all 3 legs on this bar stool, or else it'll topple over and it'll fall over. So I went through the steps with Freddie, and then he relapsed. And I finished him out with Raj, then he relapsed. I was like, shit. And I got Roscoe as a sponsor. And Roscoe, he ran me. I mean, by this time, he just wanted my 10th steps, my nightlies, you know, where were my defects popping up throughout the day? You know, where was this delusion of power coming back into my life? And he just wanted me to share with where I was at every day. And anyway, I ended up sponsoring a lot of guys down there. I sponsored about 10 dudes, and probably about 4 of them made it through the program. And but I did my due diligence, man. And you know what made me do that? Like, I was able to look back and say I've done everything that I can in my power, you know, because it's not my job to save you. It's just my job to walk you through the book, which will connect you to a power greater than yourself, which will save you. You know, I just show you what they showed me, man. And you know, what really made me think about that was a kid named Zach Adair. And Zach, he stopped me one day. God bless his soul. He stopped me. He said, Bradley, can I holler at you? This was when I first got back to the Bridges. And he said, can I holler at you? He said, I'm trying to talk myself into staying. I said, well, what do you need me for? He said, you know it's a bad idea to leave, man. I said, what you going to do different, Zach? He said, I just want to see my kids, man. He said, I want to see my kids. Father's Day is Sunday. And I said, Zach, if you go to the bus stop, you know, they got drugs at the bus stop. You're probably going to, you know, what are you going to do? Well, if I don't find no drugs, I'm going to catch the bus. If I do, I'm just going to hitchhike back to Atlanta. I said, Zach, they said, hey, Bradley, come here. Hold on, Zach. And I went over here. Zach left that night, and he was dead on Father's Day morning. He hung himself. But looking back, did I do everything I could? I didn't. I didn't do everything I could have. Not to say I could have saved Zach, you know, but I didn't do everything in my power. And that was a hard lesson learned, to make sure you cover every base that you can. If you care for someone, you know, care for them, man. Don't feed your ego with trying to do too much. They could have found someone else to take the trash out with them. You know, by this time I was a chief, and so I moved up in the ranks at Bridges of Hope. I was a house guy, and I was a house chief, and then I was a fucking office assistant one, top unpaid position at the Bridges of Hope. And, and you know, and it was awesome. It was awesome. I got to help guys on a different level. I got to talk to families, and you know, and it was awesome. Like, not just because I could get on the computer, but you know, I found what it felt like to be useful, and that was something that I had never known before. When I have guys opening up to me, crying and telling me stuff, or when I tell them about some of my fifth step shit, you know, I actually open the gate with my fifth step shit, you know. And for anyone who hasn't done a fifth step, don't leave off, you know, the same-sex relations, the molestation, the rape, the murder, and any other of the weird stuff. You know what I mean? The bestiality, pedophilia, fucking, if there's a name for it, somebody's done it. You know, we're human beings, and me, personally speaking, I'm a faulted human being. Left to my own devices, I will fuck some shit up. You know, I would, whatever. You know, I'm not gonna go there, but today, I've gotten back in my son's life. You know, just last week, I was right at his side filming him in the front of the 404 Day Parade with his Tri-Cities marching band, playing the trombone, cheering him on, dropping him off at his little girlfriend's house. You know, I'm able to show up today, and I'm able to be present for people that I love, and even people that I don't know. You know, I'm useful today. I call people. I answer phone calls when people call me. You know, I started to write an affirmations list the other night, and you know, this affirmations list was something that we want to be, that we might not exactly be yet. And then it got me to think about my ideals list I had wrote about 8 months back. Everything I wrote on this affirmations list turned into a gratitude list, because I was everything that I wanted to be 8 months ago. Today I'm honest. Today I'm caring, I'm loving, I'm compassionate, I'm patient, I'm tolerant. Not all the time, I'm not perfect, I'm not saying that. But I'm a better man. I'm a man today, and I'm a kind, generous, loving, caring man. You know, by the grace of God, and also I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and my name is Brad. Thank you for letting me share. That was all. Thank you.